The human brain is capable of learning, a lot of learning, actually. Even if you're advanced in years, your brain is perfectly capable of learning new skills right up until the very end of life. And isn't that absolutely amazing? Everybody's very comfortable with the idea that kids learn, that their brains are constantly adapting to their environment, that their behavior, their identity, their skills are constantly growing and changing. And most of us have a dim idea that that continues throughout the lifespan. But what a lot of people seem to not realize is that our brain continuing to grow, change, and adapt is very much up to us. In psychology, we talk about neuroplasticity, which basically means that our brains constantly lay down new neural pathways. So when you learn something, or when you understand something, or when there is a pattern of neural pathways laid down in your brain, this pattern becomes stronger with repetition, but it can change and adapt over time, and new neural pathways can be laid down. That's why learning new skills, doing crosswords, learning new languages is actually protective. It keeps our brains active, and it protects our brains against dementia. It's a bit like a map, an incredibly convoluted map. And there are well laid down major routes of getting from A to B on that map. The more those routes are repeated and the more times you take a specific road, the more that neural pathway becomes ingrained and embedded. It becomes stronger and more powerful. But there are loads of different ways to travel across the map of your brain. Every time we do something different, we create new routes and new pathways. Our brain is like a massive supercomputer. Calling it a kind of map seems extremely simplistic, but it's good enough for the purposes of this discussion. Every time we learn a new skill, every time we do something different, every time we step out of our comfort zone, we teach our brain a different neural pathway. And that is the most fascinating thing about our brains, how much they can change. And that's not just in childhood. Of course, it's during childhood that our brains are the most plastic. It is the time of our lives when new neural pathways are being constantly laid down and our brain is agile and quick to learn. Research shows that actually the best time to learn a new language is before the age of 6. Isn't that incredible? You can see in small children, watching them grow, it's just beyond amazing how they change from day to day, from hour to hour almost. The difference between a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, it's huge because the amount of development that happens. So I think most of us have a fundamental understanding that our brains are plastic and that they can and do change, and we can change our behavior over time. And if we look back over our lives and reflect, we can normally see a lot of change. We can see that all kinds of things changed over the years, and that these kinds of changes were driven mostly by our behavior. That's not to say that our thoughts and feelings aren't also important, because of course, all of these things are linked. If you exercise consistently, eat a healthy diet, get enough sleep, your brain, your body, and also your identity is going to be very different than if you did not exercise consistently, you always prioritized work over sleep, and you didn't really take good care of yourself. You're going to have a different identity. And for me, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because people seem very aware that behavior can change. They may find it hard. They may not understand why they battle to change behavior. But generally, you have a reasonable idea that you can change your behavior. However, when it comes to psychological aspects, people seem very, very disinclined to believe that they can change. And this idea is well established in the media, in literature, in the stories and the narratives of our world. Basically, we think of our personality as almost immutable, as something that we don't have that much control over, as something that is fixed and is stable over time. And our identity, how we see ourselves and what we think of ourselves, is also fixed and stable over time. But in actual fact, the research would definitely differ. There are 100% certain personality traits that you and I were born with. Babies from birth have distinct dispositions. We all say things like, oh, he's just like his father, or he reminds me so much of my brother, because personality traits are genetic as much as our physical trait, like the color of our eyes or how tall we're going to be. These things are in many ways established before we're born, but it's what we do with that is very much within our control. These are the things that we can change. We can change our psyche. We can change how we see ourselves. We can change our sense of identity. Isn't that wonderful to think about? There are many practices, including things like journaling and meditation, have been proven time and again to show physical changes in the brain. When you take on a habit like meditation or mindfulness, your brain literally burns neural connections in a completely different way. While there are many aspects of how we feel and how our personality is expressed that originate in our biology, or in basic aspects of our external environment, there are plenty that are not. So what I mean is, if you have not been sleeping well, or you haven't eaten well, or you're just not feeling well, then that is going to have a direct impact on your mood. If you haven't had enough sun, or if you're in a challenging or toxic environment, then that will also have a massive impact on you and your mood. These external things are less within your control. I mean, if you're living with a chronic illness, if you're living with chronic pain, it's going to have an effect on your brain. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't still things that you can do that will change the way that your brain responds, that can actually build new and different neural pathways to help you to handle it better. So even if you're sick, even if you have a disease, even if you're living with some kind of terrible life circumstance, even if you've gone through a trauma, there are things that you can do that will actually wire your brain to handle these aspects differently. And isn't that hopeful? Your brain is a physical organ housed inside your body. If you accept that the way that you move, exercise, and treat your body will physically change your body, then why not the way that you treat and handle your brain and move your brain and exercise your brain will have an impact on the brain itself. If you play a sport every day, over time, your body is going to adapt to that sport. Your muscle, your agility, your reflexes, your coordination will all improve in line with the sport that you're doing. And the exact same thing applies to your brain. And interestingly, to yourself, your sense of self, your mental health, your identity, your self-esteem, your psychological flexibility, and your resilience. Putting time and effort into your personal growth, your mental health, and the dexterity of your brain is an amazing investment into your well-being and your future. Just like there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of different kinds of activities and physical sports that you can do, there are as many different forms of exercises for your brain, ways of thinking about the world, ways of engaging with the world, and things that you can do that will have a direct impact on the neural networks in your brain and laying down different ones and newer ones and better ones. The thing is that what works for one person may not work for another person in the same way. It's just like not everyone's cut out for running, and not everyone's cut out for horse riding. But even if you're in a wheelchair, even if you have some kind of a physical condition that would prevent you completely from running, there will be forms of exercise that you can do and that you can enjoy and that will greatly improve your physical health. It is exactly the same with personal growth and mental health. There are things that will suit you, that will resonate with you, that you will be attracted to. Those are the things that you should start with, because if you like something, you're way more likely to do it. It hurts me to think that there's a whole huge world out there who don't know this, who don't realize that there's a better way to live, that there's a better way to be, that there are ways in which you can improve your life no matter what is going on. There are ways in which you can build psychological resilience and mental flexibility, that you can become more of who you were always meant to be.